Hey, Kathy.
Hi, Lisa.
So here we are, episode 01 of our newly named podcast, Making Change, and our adorable little logo that you created. I'm Lisa Mazzanetto. I'm a mental health therapist and addiction therapist.
And I'm Kathy Godfrey. That's actually my last name, which people seem to get a kick out of. And yeah, I don't really have any credentials. So I think I would just say I'm some sort of a pilgrim that enjoys sharing where I've been. I guess if I had to describe myself, it might be that.
Kathy, all the years that I've known you, I've never thought of your name in that way.
Isn't that funny?
My God, see how we see people different? Like, that is so fabulous. Okay.
I had so many clients comment on that when we were at the recovery center together. They would say, "Oh my God, that is not your name." And I'm like, "Yeah, it really is." And I didn't get it at first. I'm like, why they thought that was so interesting. But oh yeah, Godfrey, got it.
Wow. Gosh. Yeah. Like I said, I've seen your name a million times. Of course, I've known you for so long, and I have never. Isn't that funny how we see something from a fresh pair of eyes?
I love that. I also have to say right here that that's actually my amazing ex-husband's last name.
Wow.
And I have no intention of ever giving it up. So, and he's okay with that. I've told him this is going to stay mine, and he said he would have it no other way. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. So,
So here we are.
yay! I almost clapped. You know that clapping thing I do when I get excited. I almost clapped right into the microphone, but I didn't. I refrained just in time because I'm excited today. What are we talking about?
Oh, fear.
Fear.
The root of all things that hold us back.
Indeed, yes. The first thing that comes up when you say that word is so probably everybody listening to this knows who Pema Chodron is, and she has this beautiful little parable about a warrior, a girl who's a warrior who is going into battle with fear, and she shows it the respect of asking if she can engage in battle with it, and as a result, it
Wow.
tells her its secret, and its secret is, I have no power unless you do what I say. Like, no matter how loud I shout, no matter how bad I make you feel, I have no power unless you are willing to do what I say. And that's how she learns to defeat fear.
Oh, I love that.
It's pretty great. Yeah, anybody can Google that. It's super famous little story that Pema tells.
That is so beautiful. You know, I often experience themes. I just notice themes throughout my week in my sessions. And it never fails that at the end of each week, I can reflect on just overarching themes that have come up in my sessions uh, throughout the week, or even sometimes just throughout the day. But what's so interesting is I had a session yesterday that was very rooted in, like, all talk about fear. And as I reflected on my week, so many of what came up for people this week was just fear and how it manifests. And something that was really interesting yesterday was how I used the metaphor of a tree. And there's a tree that has all these branches, and fear showing up as control and manipulation and um, anxiety and anger, and all these different irritability, all these different manifestations or masks that it wears, and that the root of that is fear. And so reflecting on this past week, it really was very prevalent. So I'm excited that we're talking about this today.
especially also since this whole COVID
Yeah.
situation and the political situation and
Oh
the
my
racial
gosh.
situation
Oh my
and the
gosh.
police situation, and it's everything that's making everyone so uncomfortable right now. It's
Mm,
all about that. And the first thing I would love to say about fear that's illustrated in Pema's little story is that there's nothing real about it, which is the wildest thing. I know that everybody listening to this is going to want to recoil from that idea. I'm like, that cannot be true, because look what it has done in my life, or look what it's doing in my life right now. But as Pema says, or as fear says through Pema, it can't do anything. It's not an agent. It's not even an agency. It's a feeling that we give the label fear, and then we give it credit for all the uncomfortable things that are
mm,
happening to us, through us, around us, all of that. But it's actually not a real thing. And so maybe I think we might have touched on this in our last episode, but maybe I need to clarify what I mean by real. And I'm a very strict realist, put that in quotation marks, meaning that if there's no evidence for it right now, in the moment that you're in just the surroundings where you are, not this moment in your life, but this moment right now in your environment, if there's no evidence for it, it's not real.
mhm.
So folks might say, that's insane. There are plenty of things real that aren't here right now, like when my dog got run over and died. That was real. But you see,
Sure.
what you just did is you put that in past tense. You didn't say it is real. You said it was real. So in past tense, there's nothing past tense in this moment. Notice, right? I could tell, I mean, I'm 58 years old. I could tell 58 years worth of stories that are not here in this moment. And what I mean by real is it happening right now?
Mhm.
I can think of a million things. I can think of unicorns, but they're not real. I can think of my marriage that ended 12 years ago, and that also is not real in this moment.
Mhm.
Interesting
It is
distinction, isn't
interesting.
it?
Yeah.
So
Because we
then,
get so hooked from the past or into the future.
exactly. And you just put your finger on where fear lives.
Yeah.
Never here. You know, as one of my brilliant clients said not too long ago, and I've been quoting her ever since, and she knows that I am using her words, which is, the thing that scares me only exists when I'm not looking.
Ooh, sit with that for a minute. The
Mm-hmm.
thing that scares me only exists when I am not looking. Did I say that right?
You did.
Mm. And I think you said to me once, and I, of course, quote you in a lot of my sessions with people, is that anxiety only lives in the past and the future, which anxiety is fear. So, you know, for those of us who do struggle with anxiety and how to manage it, it's truly existing in the past and the future. It is never happening in this moment.
That
And so
is,
when we're feeling anxious, it's like, okay, well, where are you right now? Are you in the past or are you in the future?
yeah, yes, that's absolutely true. And another important thing to realize when we're talking about reality and anything, but reality and fear for sure, is that reminder, you cannot be anywhere other than the present moment. You will never find yourself anywhere other than the present moment. So, how is it that a thought or a story of a past and a future can change anything for you in this present moment, if it can only be in the past or the future, which are thoughts, and
Yeah.
you can only be in the present now? Then how does fear affect you? How could it possibly affect you if it's not here? So sometimes people say, I've had several people ask me that feel confused about me saying that fear and anxiety or that anxiety is fear, that there's no difference between them.
Mm.
And they want to make the distinction between, if I'm taking a hike and a snake falls out of a tree and lands at my feet, that's fear. But when I think about my upcoming custody hearing, that's anxiety. There's no difference.
Right.
What they're trying to refer to is that instinctive get out of the way. If a snake falls at my feet, I'm going to jump back. But you don't need to stand and think about that.
Right. That's survival instinct.
It's just an impulse that happens to save your life. That is not fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's a kind of wisdom. It's a kind of like, whoop, split second. And just because you're not consciously thinking, oh, that is a snake, I should take a step back.
Right, right.
Just do it. And we call that fear. But that's over as soon as the situation is over. Whatever feeling you want to describe. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that what's interesting about that is because of the way that the brain works in that, from that reptilian brain that says survive, you see the snake and you react immediately. That's that fight, flight, freeze instinct. And then the brain catches up with the processing of fear, danger, right? You're now scared because that's a snake. And so it's like a delayed reaction of fear from the actual survival. You're like coming out of your
I'm so
chair.
excited about that moment. I'm so glad that you like brought our attention to that moment, because what happens is the snake moment's over.
Right.
You're safe.
Yes.
And then this is what all of us have learned to do, is to replay that incident in our head over and over and over. And why? It's already resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no, I love, so, okay, this comes from Westworld, by the way. There was an episode where one of the creators was saying when the robots go offline, when something goes wrong, they start talking nonsensically, but they say real words, but they kind of talk themselves in circles because they're trying to talk themselves back into rightness, into being in their storyline and saying the proper things and behaving in the proper way. They're trying to put things right with all that loop talking. That is what the left hemisphere does after a moment like that. It's like, oh, resolution. I need to make sure that I'm safe from danger. But you can see, you, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, the situation is already resolved. There's no need for all that talking. Where is the danger in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
And you will see in the past, it was a few minutes ago with the snake. It's not here. It's not real. So I love that you pinpointed that moment, because that's exactly how we end up then carrying that moment into anxiety.
Yes. Yep. Carrying the story and retelling it and reprocessing it, replaying it. I mean, and that is, that's true for many people who have traumatic pasts and continue to relive it, experience it through PTSD symptoms, show up in the body, that body somatic response, I should say, not body, but somatic response. And it keeps people like hijacked in that place.
Yes, because they don't know the secret to Pema's story, which is fear can't do anything unless they do what it says. So PTSD is really interesting, and I personally have experienced it, and I spent some time with this amazing man who was had done 3 tours in Afghanistan, and I spent some time with him after his 3rd tour, way far out in the country, trying to be helpful in whatever way that I could to him. But sometimes we would just be having a walk down the street or sitting by the lake or whatever we were doing, and he would suddenly 100% believe that he was still in Afghanistan, and his body would respond that way. So I'm so grateful that I got to have that. I've experienced it both for myself and, from being with someone else. He didn't go anywhere. His body, his mind, his brain, his consciousness, everything stayed right on that lake bank next to me.
Mm-hmm.
but he was convinced that he was somewhere else. So that's just a really, that's a different degree of the same process, which is that our attention gets so focused on something that is in the past or the future that our body experiences it as if it were happening right now. But it is never happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the techniques that work best for folks with PTSD are the ones that can ease their fear enough for them to realize that that's the case, that it's not happening now. And that by
Right.
saying that it's not real does not diminish its impact in the past, but just to say that recognizing that it is not happening right now, nor can it be happening right now, that is the freedom. And again, I say this about everything that I talk about. You can't hear me or anyone say that. Even if you heard it a million times, it would not change your personal experience of fear, of anxiety, of PTSD, of anything else, because you have to be the one that notices what's here right now. And gradually you will see that it's always the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So there's a book called Body Keeps the Score, which a lot of people know about, Bessar van der Kolk. And he talks about how the re-traumatization of memories, like what you were just discussing, that, the flashbacks, I guess we could call them, are sometimes more traumatizing for people with PTSD than the actual event that happened. So that story, that narrative that continues to replay, and how, mindfulness is a very effective way to help people get out of that past story. And then through the work that you do and offer people is such a beautiful, I think, way to to have another tool for people to really be able to get out of that cycle.
Yes, it's so the piece about, or the practice of looking at this present moment to see what's real and what isn't. Like for me in the work that I do, that's the first step. Like that allows someone who is struggling with anxiety, fear, PTSD, self-judgment, the whole list of things
Mm-hmm.
that we struggle with. So they have to feel safe enough in the present moment, not from
Yes.
me or anyone else, but
Right.
being in the moment itself. So once they teach themselves that it's always going to be the same, this will sound crazy to you if you haven't experienced it. I'm saying to anyone listening, um, but safety is actually a principle of the present moment. And of course, I would go on to say the same is true about, everything that we're looking for. But for right now, we'll say safety, since we're talking about fear.
Mm-hmm.
So once a person practices noticing enough that safety is a principle of their present moment, then we can look at some other things. But I have this thing that I say that sounds too simple to be true. Everything I say sounds too simple to be true. So everybody has to look and see. But the trouble with trauma, whatever degree
Mm-hmm.
we have experienced, the trouble with trauma is what it teaches us to believe about the present moment. That's what the problem is.
Tell me more
Because,
about that.
yeah, it's so exciting to see this because for myself, for example, early trauma in my life taught me two things that made my life go wildly sideways for decades after that. One was I thought I had learned from those traumatic events that I didn't matter. Because as a child, it just seemed like, if I was important at all to anyone or anything, wouldn't somebody do something about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or have prevented it in some way? Completely erroneous conclusion. I'm a child, though. I don't know that.
Sure.
And the second thing it taught me was I'm never safe. That the present moment is not a safe place because at any second something horrible could happen exactly like it did. And see, there goes the loop.
Right.
That's the permission that we give the story to keep running. It's exactly like the Westworld bots, because you just keep talking that circle of past,
Mm-hmm.
future, past, future, past, future. trying to feel safer in the present moment by doing that. You're trying to talk yourself back into rightness, but that doesn't work, obviously, because it's not real. It won't stay fixed. No matter what I say about the past or the future, it can change in my very next breath because they're not here.
Right.
So they can just morph into anything. So again, calling our attention to the present moment and asking. So in my case, for example, and what I've taught hundreds of clients to do in the present moment is to ask, to look around, make a list. What are indications or evidence that I am safe in this moment? And I don't let them get by with just going, oh, I know I'm safe right now, because that's not helpful. It needs to be an identification of what in this moment says that I am safe. And as we focus on that, the body starts to soften. It starts to let go of the whole anxiety response because the reality is safety.
Yeah, and I think from the therapeutic clinical lens, just for a minute, and working with people with traumas, I want to offer different words for safety too. Sometimes safe and safety doesn't resonate with people because they don't know what it feels like to be safe. So I'm thinking about things like what does being at ease feel like, or what is, just trying to use the words that you feel like resonate with you, that mirror safety or ease or security in this moment.
Yes,
So
use whatever word you want to experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's really how I say it to them. It's like, what do you want to experience right now?
Yeah.
That doesn't feel threatening. Like what do you want to experience? And then look for evidence that is here. I don't focus on them trying to find the emotion or the physical response of it, because that can feel completely inaccessible. And if they identify the evidence in the moment that it's here, the body naturally responds to that, just like it naturally responds to the trauma, the PTSD, the fear that's not here. The body will experience whatever you focus on.
Mm-hmm. And something you said, and I have to say this because, again, this is something I quote a lot with my people who are struggling to be present. I have so many people who stay, and I know that people can't see us right now, but I'm kind of like mimicking, like, people stay up in their heads, right? People don't get into their bodies enough. And you said something to me some time ago that I come back to it all the time, that if you're struggling to feel in the present moment, notice your body, because that is the one thing that's always truly present all the time. And that's so so simple, right? Because everything you say is so simple, yet so mind-blowing. Like, I love that too, as a reminder for people who just so stuck in their heads and so stuck in the past and the future, and trying to find evidence of ease or safety or security, whatever that might look like in this moment. Like, look at their legs, notice that what is actually present all the time is their body. And that's such a cool concept.
I love that so much. So, yeah, actually in a yin practice groups, I would say, we're going to let the body be our guru for the next hour. It is going to teach us what being in this moment is. It's going to teach us what's real and what isn't. Because the body, of course, it's always here. Now, here's a fun thing about that, also obvious and simple, that we ignore, which is your mind and body are not two different things
right.
in this present moment. So if I say the body is always present, where else could it be? That must include all of you. Because what else is there?
Of course.
Even on the screen, I will say to people sometimes, as I hear them talk about, I said this about my body, the body did this, I did this with it, I want to do this with it. And I say, when you look at me, even through the screen, do you see a Kathy and a body? Are you having to deal with Kathy and a body? And they always laugh because it's ridiculous. Of course, that's not what they're dealing with. And
Mm.
it feels so real to them that there is a them and a body that is responding to me, like two things. And of course, there's only one. And if there's only one, then yep, you're only ever in the present moment. The brain or mind, whichever you want to say, that is thinking about anything is doing so in this body, in this present moment. There's nowhere for anything else to happen, whether it's something you want, like love, or something you don't want, like fear. It's only happening in you right now.
Mm.
So the thing, a really important thing about fear, especially the super severe feeling of PTSD, is what we have to learn is that when that initial flash, we'll call it that, happens, that initial thought, or I'm suddenly focused on that scary past, I do not have to just throw my hands up and think that that it's over. That would be like the little warrior in Pima's story, like being so afraid of fear that she didn't even walk up and ask, may I have permission to do battle with you? If she hadn't made that first step, none of the rest of that story could have happened. If she was so afraid of it that she turned her back on it, tried to walk away from it, tried not to feel it, tried to absent herself from the moment, none of that would have been very helpful to her. But because she literally looked it in the face and said, tell me about yourself. May I go to battle with you? Yes. Tell me about yourself. Well, here's what you need to know about me. And it really is like that. It's my analogy of we're no longer children trapped on the top of the bed by the monsters underneath, but we respond to our lives as if we are.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never had a client look under the bed and get eaten. That's never happened. It's always like, oh my God, there's nothing under there.
It's like the bucket of crabs.
Wondered if you remember that. So great.
Of course I remember the bucket of crabs. We share the bucket of crabs.
I will. It was so fun. I would say this to groups a lot because they would say, well, I just started thinking about this and then it was over. Like all things happened. I dissociated or I did something that I regretted or whatever it was. And I'd say, listen, here's a fun analogy. If you called an Uber or a Lyft, I'm not plugging either one. If you call the car and so you're standing outside waiting for the car and it pulls up and you go skipping up to the car, all excited to be going where you're going. And then you realize that the car is being driven by a bucket of crabs. And you're like, So what we do when we just give into that thought is we're just like, just hop in the car anyway. You see the crabs, that buckets of crabs cannot drive. You think it's not going to turn out well. You already know that, but you hop into the back seat anyway. And then off you go, being driven by a bucket of crabs. And I don't think, it might be kind of exciting, but I don't think it's going to end well. And that's exactly what it's like when a big bucket of scary thoughts just feels like it just falls on us. And I totally used to describe it as I was fine. Wham! I got smacked in the forehead with a 2x4 and I was down for the count. That's how it felt to me. That's how powerful thoughts felt.
Yeah.
The thing about that is that's only because we were taught that unknowingly, unintentionally, of course, by the folks around us who were dealing with fear in that exact same way. And in this present moment, where is the thing that I'm afraid of? That's the simple question that you can start with. If you're really struggling, if your life feels just invaded by fear and anxiety, start with that simple practice. You don't have to sit still. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to do a mindfulness practice. If you can just ask, whenever you feel afraid, just ask, where is the thing that's scaring me? Where is it? You will teach yourself. It's not here.
So, all right, this is a great, I'm gonna test the theory for a minute. She's doing the happy dance.
I love when that happens.
Okay, I'm gonna use COVID
Okay.
As an example here, because I know for me, the idea of getting COVID is pretty scary. And, I'm doing like hardcore quarantining, isolating, staying at home right now, doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing. Um, and so let's just test the theory for a minute. So let's pretend, okay, I love my neighbors and I don't want anything to happen to them. So I'm going to talk about hypothetical neighbors. Let's pretend my neighbors have COVID. And I'm in this moment, I'm like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, I was just outside talking to my neighbors in the driveway the other night, and I just found out they have COVID, and I'm scared right now. I've got a lot of anxiety about getting sick.
Well, so the first question would be, where is the thing that's scaring me?
Out there.
Well, so I'm asking you to confine your observations to your present moment.
Hmm. It's not right here,
Right.
right?
So
It's next door.
so you say. Do you see what I mean? Like you just left what's real for you when you say that.
Right, right.
Fascinating, right? Because
Yeah.
the only way that you think you know that is a story of the past. You think you know that because you think that you were out there talking to them and you think that then they later told you or somehow you found out that they tested positive for COVID.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is an important thing to see. I am not asking you to question if the past was real. I'm merely asking you to question, is it real right now? Is it happening right now? So when I say, where is this threat that's scaring you? Where is COVID right now? We're in this scenario we're pretending that you're in. Where's COVID right now?
It's not right here
And so if you
that
were
I'm
my
aware of. I haven't been tested, but I'm a
are you
challenging client,
I
Kathy.
know I love it so much. I, except you're laughing we know what we're doing, but these are the same kinds of responses I get when it's
Sure.
very
Yeah.
serious to them. It's very serious.
Yes.
So, so COVID right now, I would
Mhm.
ask if you were my client, I would say, and you said something like, "Well, I don't know, I haven't been tested." Like, well,
That's future.
if you have COVID right
Mhm.
now, how do
Mhm.
you feel?
In this moment, I feel just fine. I'm enjoying this conversation with you.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
right now, you feel good.
Hmm.
Right now, there's nothing in your immediate environment that's threatening. Is that
Right.
true?
That is true.
So, continuing to pretend you're my client, could you look around and tell me three pieces of evidence that say that you are safe, at ease, comfortable, whatever words you want to use?
Yeah, I'm in my office and um, I'm alone in here, which to me feels safe. Um, I've got a Buddha head staring at me that gives me some feeling of contentment. Um, so yeah, I mean, I feel comfortable in the chair that I'm sitting in.
I love all of that. And then, if this were a real session, I would then move on to what are things in your environment that are expressions of love to you.
Mm,
Not that you are doing something to feel love, not that you are projecting love towards someone or something, but when you look at the things in your environment, what are the ones that allow you to have a loving feeling in you?
hmm.
Do you want to say,
Well, sure. Like sitting in front of you on my screen.
yay?
um, I know that my office is a place where, like, I love to work. I haven't been able to work from here much lately, other than on telehealth, but I love the work that happens in here with clients and the healing and the expressions of love I see from clients and their process.
And how lovely is that? And so,
Mm,
if we had a whole hour session I would spend some time with the two of us enjoying the feeling of each thing that you identify.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would gently turn your attention to how the body is feeling. So
Mm-hmm.
after we do that for 3, 4, 5 minutes, I would say, notice how your solar plexus feels.
Well, and I want to share that when you had me notice in my environment what expressions of love are being reflected to me, I noticed as soon as you said that, I noticed a softening in my stomach because, as you know me well enough to know that my stomach is kind of my barometer and clenches a lot. And as soon as you said that, I felt that softening, and I noticed that somatic feeling of relief. It felt
Isn't that amazing? In
mhm.
just a minute or two.
Right. And COVID was so far from my head,
Yes.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's the beauty in this work too, is that I forgot completely about why I was, like that theory, that kind of test that I wanted to test the theory, like, which is something that can be real for me. I do want to say a disclaimer that my neighbors do not have COVID. So I feel it's very
Right.
important
Right.
to mention. But that, when I initially brought tightening in my stomach, that fear, right? The fear of the unknown. And as we did this, like that softening that occurred is something I've experienced many times with you. And I love that because that's that indication to me, like this works.
Absolutely. And as I was saying to a client this week, she was like, sometimes I think this can't really be doing anything because it's so simple. And what I do during the week between our sessions is so simple. And I think, surely I must be doing, I need to do something that feels more difficult or more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say to that, and that's normal too, that happens all the time with people that I work with,
Yeah.
like, this can't be all. There's got to be like something else. This couldn't really be doing anything. And so what I had her do relative to what you just said to me is like, well, let's look and see the changes that have happened in your life in the last 30 days. Let's make a list. Because if you can't find any, I will be the first to say, I'm not the thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can't make a list of some dramatic changes in 30 days, then I'm not it. And I don't want to try to be it if I don't see that evidence. And she started crying immediately before we even started the list because she realized it was going to be all the things that she thought would never leave, including in her eyes, some very serious trauma and PTSD.
Mm.
So yeah, I always want people to look for the evidence. And the evidence is going to be how you feel and how that transforms everything about your world. And I mean everything. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing that this won't touch, that won't transform. Relationships of all kinds, your desire to have purpose in the world, the way you feel when you watch the news. I mean, it's all the things. And it really is as simple as where your attention is. So when your attention was on COVID, your body responded.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing what it's supposed to do. I would throw in there, and this might be a little for a little more down the road, or not, I don't know, but the purpose of that body's response in this moment when you think of COVID is not to tell you that you're in danger of COVID, is to tell you that you're in danger of a false focus.
Mm.
That what you're looking at is not here right now, and that's going to scare you.
And that false focus could like be equated to anxiety, fear.
It's 100.
Yeah.
It's the only producer of fear.
Right. So if you identify, say, like as an anxious person, then that anxiety perhaps is your expression of a false focus. Am I saying that right?
Say it one more time.
So if you identify as an anxious person and you're
Yes.
feeling anxiety in any given moment, that's really a manifestation or expression of a false focus.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, what that means is there's no such thing as an anxious person.
Mm.
There is a focus that creates anxiety in the moment.
Yes,
That's
right.
not an identity, right? It's not.
Which I
So
love that.
if you say I'm an anxious person, I would say, show me your evidence that you're an anxious person.
Mm-hmm.
In this moment, where is it? And if we had an hour-long session, I would sit and I'd be helpful if I
Mm-hmm.
needed to give a little hint or a clue, but I would definitely wait for the client to identify that.
Yeah.
What's the evidence that you're an anxious person? Which, we will talk about this in many more episodes, I'm sure, but that self-definition of I am a blank person,
Mm-hmm.
that is really all of the work that I do.
Hmm.
Those are the things that we look for evidence of in the present moment, which we will never find. And that's the transformation point. So I'm an anxious person. Where's the evidence that that is true? It will never be in the present moment. It requires a story of the past,
Or the future.
which gets projected as a
The
future, right?
past.
So
Right.
if I'm telling a future, it can only be the past. Because what else would I imagine for my future except what I imagine I have already lived?
Hmm. Yeah. That's a mind twist right there.
It is, isn't
I
it?
kept that clean. I just want to notice.
I don't think we have to keep it clean.
All those
It's
sensitive
like
listeners out there, I'm trying to keep
total,
my
it's a
potty
total
mouth
mind
out.
fuck. That's what she said. Total. And it is, because if you can just start noticing what life is right now, and you don't have to do, like it doesn't require a yak or a mountain in Peru or some kind of 6,000-year-old lineage behind you. Like none of that. You don't need any of that. Do it if you want to. It can be fun, but you don't need any of that. All you need is the ability to notice what's here and what isn't. And so far, I've never talked to a person who didn't have that ability.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't know they could do it.
Hmm. Yeah. So having guidance in how to do it. That's
That's
what
it.
that's what you're here for, Kathy.
That's it. And I say to every single person I work with, my first goal is to delete myself as quickly as possible.
Mm.
If I'm doing anything, I should very soon not be necessary. If someone feels like I'm a necessity in this process for them, like beyond 6 or 8 months, then I haven't actually done what I want to do, which is for them to notice that this is Dorothy. They had it all along. It was there all along. They don't need to go to Oz.
Mm-hmm.
It's just right here.
Mm. Just need to know where to look.
Hint, you're only ever one place.
Right.
Seriously,
It's
I
true.
I know, but people, including me in the past, this is how I learned this because I looked everywhere else.
The 40-year, what was that? The 40-year search that you talked about in our first episode. And
Yeah,
you're
the Hebrews wandering for 40 years in the desert when
right.
they got when they left the Pharaoh, when they were freed, so to speak. And they wandered for 40 years around in a desert that you could cross easily in 11 days.
There you go.
And I did take the 40-year route, and I was very frustrated at some points of that. But now I'm so grateful that it happened that way, because as I said last time, there's not a corner of that 40-year desert that I don't know about, which is great when people have questions. And I can say,
Mm-hmm.
don't come over here. This is not it. Go that way. Yeah. So, do we want to talk about how, what does fear look like in all the lives right now. So we identify COVID, which is a fear of physical. Well, actually, I think COVID probably like stirs up every fear of every kind, but maybe the most obvious is the lack of physical well-being. And
Yeah, I think there are a lot of fears associated with it. Fear of people like having financial ruin, or fear of getting other people sick, fear of the unknown.
mhm.
There's a
Yeah, and
few.
yeah, any fear that's not, if the cause of the fear cannot be found in the present moment, then fear can grow as big as your attention allows it to grow.
Hmm.
So when you quote think about COVID, which is not for us in this present moment, although it might be for some people who are listening, if it's not in your present moment, then, but your fear of it being in your moment is continuing to grow, and you are focusing on that, then it can turn into just the most bleak, apocalyptic possibilities.
Sure.
And the way to bring yourself back from that is to just notice what's actually here in the present moment. You know, we think, this is an important thing to see about fear. We think that we are somehow preventing the bad thing from happening by thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Preparing for it.
Right. And how could that possibly be
Right.
true? I mean, if we think that we can control a future, that's, I say that crazy thing that I always say, that's never going to arrive, then it's a fruitless job, but it can be one that really does take up every bit of your awareness and energy, and you can feel really stressed and drained
Mm-hmm.
about it. And what I mean,
Well,
go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say what I mean by the future never arrives. It's that thing that I will probably mention every time we talk, which is, text me when you find yourself in the future. I really do want to know about that. And I say that to people all the time. I've been saying it for years. So far, I have not gotten a text from the future.
Right.
Because no matter what you think right now, wherever you are conscious can only be your now.
Sure.
So, what is our obsession with controlling something that never actually arrives?
Right. And that makes me think about, like, somebody said to me once that worrying doesn't change the outcome.
I don't know why we thought it did, but I thought it did.
Right. But we spend a whole lot of energy, right? Think about how much
Yeah,
serenity we lose by sitting in that fear, thinking about the future, being stuck in the past, and thinking about what could happen because of what did happen. And shoo, how
right.
much we're missing out on in our present.
All of life, because this is
Right.
the only place life happens.
Mm-hmm.
So we're living, we think we're living something, but it's the worst. It's a nightmare of our own making
Mm.
that we're living. It just occurred to me that we could look at why do we do that? And I have no idea now how long we've been chatting already, because I forgot to look at the clock. No way. We have
We've
5 minutes.
we have about 5 minutes. If we're wrapping this up at about an hour,
Okay.
can you believe it? This hour's
No. I can't,
flown by. We might have
man.
to do a part 2 fear
Well,
episode.
I think fear is going to end up being some part of every conversation, because it's the only problem, and put problem in quotation marks because it's not real, but it
Mhm.
feels like it. So maybe then I'll just introduce, as we wrap up, I'll just introduce what might turn out to be our topic for next time, which is, so if every person listening to what we have just said about fear goes, right, yes, that makes sense. Um, and I think probably everybody says that, like, oh,
Mhm.
of course, it's kind of obvious and simple. And yes, then as soon as we stop talking about it, everybody goes right back to focusing on a past in an effort to make an outcome in the future. So the question then becomes, why do we do that? If we can see logically that worry doesn't fix anything, it doesn't control outcome, if we can see that what we fear is not here, if we can see that we are repeating a story over and over and over, trying to come to a resolution when it's already resolved, if we can see all of those things, what keeps us doing it? And I am 100% confident in saying that it is your self-definition that keeps you doing those behaviors, even though logically you know they're fruitless.
Mm-hmm.
And it was folks in addiction who helped me clarify and articulate that in the most simple way, because it's the exact same thing that we define as addiction, which is we keep doing the same thing over and over. It's destructive. It never gives us what it promises, and yet we keep doing it. You know, that whole definition of insanity that folks talk about in recovery, or maybe other circles as well. So what keeps us doing it? And the answer is, it is the way that you're defining yourself. It's the perspective you have of you that keeps you trying to manage things outside of you with illogical behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So if, just a quick example, if, as I was, if you're a person that defines yourself as, you know, I have to be really aware and vigilant and make sure that I'm okay and safe in this moment, then you have no choice but to continually run through your past and try to prevent it from happening in the future.
Yeah.
So that self-definition, that way of seeing you, is the thing that has to change in order for your behavior to change.
And so just to kind of wrap that up in a pretty little bow, which I know is not what you do, I'm curious if you could give an example of like what that would look like for somebody. How would that self-definition look different?
How could it change?
How could it change?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just use myself as an example. Part of the 40-year journey of all this that I did, well, I had to do the safety part first, because I was so scared all the time of everything, and that I knew I wasn't going to be able to hear anything deeper or more about being human if I didn't find a way to at least lower my fear levels. So what I did was exactly what I talk about all the time. With the very first thing I had to do was ask myself continuously, where's the thing I'm afraid of? Where's the thing I'm afraid of? And I did that with such determination because I was out of options. So what I came to notice was I never could find it. It was never in the present moment with me. And so as I realized that, the fear level started to come down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to see, oh, it's just completely false that I'm never safe. Because so far, I haven't found a moment in which I was not safe. And once that settled in, then I had a completely different view of my past. I realized that believing that I was never safe made me remember primarily moments when I wasn't safe, which made my past look like I had never been safe in the world. But once my perspective changed in the present moment, that became a speck compared to everything else that was also true in my past. And there was no way once you see that, you can't unsee it. And so my self-definition of someone who was never safe, I didn't have a choice. It was just over. Because I saw it wasn't true. Sometimes, and I know we probably need to wrap up, but I use Santa Claus as an analogy for this, because me believing that I'm never safe was no more true than Santa Claus. And yet Once I saw that Santa wasn't real, I never again had to struggle with thinking it was.
Oh, I love that. That's a
And
great way to describe that.
and here's the bold assertion that I think I brought up last week as well, which is no thought, no matter how terrifying, no thought has any more power in your present moment than Santa Claus.
I love
Imagine
that.
how disappointed you would feel all the time if you thought Santa was real but never visited you.
Oh,
See?
that would suck. I've been so bad. He didn't even leave me coal. He just didn't come.
Exactly. Exactly. And all of our self definitions work that way.
Yeah. So I love that practice of where's the thing I'm afraid of. Like maybe people can leave this episode with that practice of asking themselves, just to kind of work on that fear piece and finding safety or ease or security or peace or whatever it is that feels like it resonates with you in this moment. Asking yourself repeatedly, where's the thing I'm afraid of in this moment,
Yeah.
and see what you come up with. I love that.
And we will continue to talk about what's in this moment and how your felt experience changes, just as you described when we did the little COVID switch.
Yeah.
Also, know it takes no longer than that for anyone. It's just a minute or two of focus and your body will respond.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so powerful. When you experience that, you'll know when you do. And
Miss it. Can't miss it.
right, you can't miss it. And when you do, it's like this moment of, whoa, that really does work. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
The best part is that everybody is the one. Oh, I hate that saying. You're the one you've been waiting for, but it's literally true. Like this practice teaches you that it's literally true, that you've just been waiting to discover what you already have. It's not a compliment. It's not even a spiritual statement. It's just the truth in the present moment to be discovered. So yay.
yay.
Yay, everybody. Yay. It's joy all the time, because why settle for less? That's it.
Joy all the time. I love it. Yes. Why settle for less? It's so true. So,
well, that was so much fun. I guess we
so
should wrap
fun.
up now. And
Right.
yeah, we are, Lisa and I I just feel very moved all of a sudden that we've just been talking for years and then we get to share this with whomever
Yeah.
ends
I
up
love it.
listening. I'm like, yeah.
It's so exciting. It really is.
Okay, my friend.
All right, my friend. Until the next time.
Till next time.
All right.
I am ending recording.